"We're leaving. This is taking forever." Those were my mother's words as she grabbed her purse during my college graduation ceremony. I was 24 years old, sitting in the fourth row with my cap and gown on, waiting for them to call my name. I had worked 3 jobs to pay for this degree. I had studied until 3 a.m. most nights. I had sacrificed everything, and they couldn't wait 30 more minutes. My father didn't even look at me. He just followed her down the aisle, stepping over other parents who were clapping and cheering. People stared. My best friend Emma grabbed my hand under the seat. "Are they really leaving?" she whispered. I couldn't answer. My throat was closed. I watched them disappear through the auditorium doors just as the dean announced we were 10 names away from the M's. My last name is Morrison. I was so close. The girl next to me was crying happy tears. Her whole family was there with balloons and a banner. Behind me, someone's grandmother was recording everything on her iPad. And my parents? Gone. "Why would they do that?" Emma asked, her voice shaking with anger. I knew why. They had made it clear from the beginning. "You're wasting money on a communications degree. You should have become a nurse like your sister." My sister Rebecca, 26 years old. Their golden child. The one who did everything right. The one who told them to leave early because she had dinner reservations across town and didn't want to be late. I found that out later. Much later. But in that moment, sitting in that auditorium, I felt my heart split in two. This was supposed to be my day. The one day they showed up for me. But even that was too much to ask. "Emily Morrison." They called my name. I walked across that stage alone. And nobody clapped. The applause for the girl before me was still echoing when I stepped onto the stage. Then silence. That horrible, empty silence that makes your skin crawl. I shook the dean's hand. He smiled at me, but I could see the pity in his eyes. He had watched my parents leave too. Everyone had. I grabbed my diploma and walked off the stage as fast as I could. My heels clicked against the wood floor, and each step felt like a hammer hitting my chest. When I got back to my seat, Emma was wiping her eyes. "That was bullshit," she said. Complete bullshit. I couldn't cry. Not yet, I was too numb. After the ceremony ended, families flooded the lawn outside. Balloons everywhere, flowers, hugs, cameras flashing. I stood near a tree holding my diploma, watching everyone else celebrate. "Emily!" I turned. It was Professor Chen, my academic advisor. She had been my mentor for 3 years, the one who convinced me not to drop out when things got hard. "Where are your parents?" she asked, looking around. "They had to leave early," I said, forcing a smile. "Family emergency." She didn't believe me. I could tell. "Well, I'm proud of you," she said, pulling me into a hug. "You worked harder than anyone in your class. Remember that." I nodded, but I couldn't speak. If I opened my mouth, I would break. Emma drove me home. We didn't talk. What was there to say? When I walked into my apartment, I saw 17 missed calls from my sister Rebecca. Not one from my parents. I called Rebecca back. "Oh, good, you're done," she said. "Listen, Mom and Dad are here at the restaurant with me and David. We got you a plate. Are you coming? Are you coming?" Like I was the one who left. Like I was the one who walked out. "Rebecca," I said slowly, "did you tell them to leave early?" Silence. "Answer me." "Emily, don't be dramatic. They saw you graduate. They were there for the important part. You're just mad because you always need to be the center of attention." I hung up, and that's when I finally cried. But something else happened that night. Something I didn't expect. A text from an unknown number. "Emily Morrison? This is attorney Patricia Moss. Your grandmother left specific instructions in her will regarding you. We need to talk immediately." My grandmother had died 2 months earlier. I wasn't allowed at the funeral. I stared at that text for 10 minutes straight. My grandmother, Helen Morrison, had been dead for 2 months, and this was the first I was hearing about a will. They didn't even tell me she died until 3 days after the funeral. My mother had called me while I was at work. "Your grandmother passed. The funeral was yesterday. We didn't want to bother you during finals." That was it. No emotion. No details. Just cold facts delivered like a weather report. I had loved my grandmother more than anyone in my family. She was the only one who ever believed in me. The only one who asked about my dreams instead of telling me they were stupid. And they kept me from saying goodbye. I texted the attorney back, "When can we meet?" Her response came in seconds. "Tomorrow. 10 a.m., my office downtown. Come alone. Come alone." Those words felt important somehow. The next morning, I walked into Patricia Moss's office wearing the only professional outfit I owned. She was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an even sharper suit. "Sit down, Emily," she said, sliding a folder across her desk. I sat. "Your grandmother changed her will 6 months before she died," Patricia said. "She was very specific about her wishes. And she was very specific about you." My hands were shaking. "What do you mean?" "She left you everything." I blinked. "What?" "The house. The savings. The investments. Everything. But there's a condition." There it was. The catch. "What condition?" I asked. Patricia leaned forward. "You have to confront your family. At the house. With me present." She recorded a video message that they all need to watch together. She wanted them to know exactly why she made this choice. My stomach dropped. "They don't know yet?" "No. They think your sister Rebecca is getting everything." "That's what your mother told them." "That's what your mother believed." Patricia's expression hardened. "Your grandmother knew your family treated you like you were invisible. She watched it happen for years, and she decided to do something about it." I felt dizzy. "When?" I whispered. "This Saturday. 2 p.m. I've already sent the letters to your parents and sister. They're required to attend, or they forfeit any chance of contesting the will." "They're going to hate me," I said. Patricia smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had seen this exact situation play out before. "Emily, they already treated you like nothing. What do you have to lose?" Saturday came too fast. I barely slept the night before. I kept imagining my mother's face when she found out. My sister's rage. My father's cold silence that somehow hurt worse than screaming. Patricia picked me up at 1:30 p.m. She drove a black Mercedes that smelled like leather and expensive perfume. "Are you ready?" she asked. "No," I said honestly. "Good. That means you're taking this seriously." When we pulled up to my grandmother's house, my parents' car was already there. So was Rebecca's white SUV with the vanity plates that said Nurse Life. My hands were sweating. We walked up to the front door and Patricia didn't knock. She used a key and walked right in like she owned the place, because technically I did now. My family was sitting in the living room. My mother was on the couch, my father in his usual recliner, and Rebecca was standing by the window, arms crossed. They all turned when we entered. "What is she doing here?" Rebecca said immediately, pointing at me like I was a stray dog. "Emily is the reason we're all here," Patricia said calmly, setting her briefcase on the coffee table. My mother stood up. "Excuse me, but we were told this meeting was about Helen's will. Emily has nothing to do with that." "Actually, Mrs. Morrison, she has everything to do with it." The room went silent. My father finally spoke. "What is this about?" Patricia pulled out a document and placed it on the table. Helen Morrison's last will and testament. Signed, notarized, and legally binding. She left her entire estate to her granddaughter, Emily Morrison. You could hear a pin drop. Rebecca laughed. Actually laughed. "That's insane. Grandma wouldn't do that. She barely even talked to Emily." "That's a lie and you know it," I said, my voice cracking. My mother's face went white. "This can't be real. Helen promised me that house. She told me Rebecca would get everything because she's responsible. Because she's successful." "Helen changed her mind," Patricia said coldly. "And she wanted you all to know why." She pulled out a laptop and set it on the table, pressing play on a video file. My grandmother's face appeared on the screen. And my mother gasped. "If you're watching this," my grandmother said from the video, her voice weak but clear, "it means I'm gone. And it means you finally have to face what you've done to Emily." Rebecca tried to leave. "Sit down," Patricia said sharply, "or you'll be removed from the will entirely. That includes the jewelry your grandmother promised you." Rebecca sat. And the video continued. My grandmother's face on that screen looked tired, but her eyes were fierce. She was wearing the blue cardigan I gave her for her birthday 2 years ago. I've watched you destroy that girl for her entire life, she said, staring directly into the camera. You made her feel worthless. You compared her to Rebecca every single day. You told her she wasn't good enough, smart enough, pretty enough. My mother's hands were clenched in her lap. Her knuckles were white. I heard what you said at her high school graduation, my grandmother continued. When she got a scholarship to college and you told her it was a waste because she'd probably drop out anyway. I was standing right behind you, Margaret, and you didn't even notice me. My mother flinched at her own name. And you, Robert, my grandmother said, her gaze shifting. My father looked up at the screen. You never once defended her, not once. You just sat there and let your wife and your eldest daughter tear her apart. That makes you just as guilty. My father's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Rebecca was staring at the floor now. And Rebecca, my grandmother said softly, you're the worst of all. Because you knew better. You knew what they were doing was wrong and you enjoyed it. You used it. You made yourself look better by making Emily look worse. This is ridiculous, Rebecca muttered. Shut up and watch, Patricia said. My grandmother took a shaky breath on the screen. Emily called me every week. She asked about my health. She sent me cards. She visited me when no one else did. And when I got sick, really sick, she was the only one who offered to take time off work to help me. I remembered that. I had begged to come stay with her. My mother said no. She said I would get in the way and that Rebecca would handle it. Rebecca visited her twice in 6 months. So I'm leaving everything to Emily, my grandmother said firmly. The house, the money, all of it. Because she's the only one who ever treated me like I mattered. And maybe now, you'll finally see what you lost. The video ended. The silence in that room was suffocating. My mother stood up slowly. Her face was red, her eyes wet with tears that I knew weren't for me. You poisoned her against us, she said, her voice shaking. You manipulated a dying old woman. I never even knew about this. I shouted. Liar, Rebecca hissed. Patricia stepped between us. Emily had no knowledge of this will until 3 days ago. Your mother, however, knew Helen was planning to make changes. Helen told her directly? My mother froze. That's why you kept Emily away from the funeral, isn't it, Margaret? My mother's face went from red to pale in seconds. That's not true, she whispered. Helen called you 2 weeks before she died, Patricia said, pulling out another document. She told you she was changing her will. She told you Emily would inherit everything, and you decided to keep Emily away so she couldn't say goodbye, so she couldn't be there when Helen needed her most. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Mom, I said, my voice breaking. Is that true? She wouldn't look at me. Answer me! She was confused. My mother shouted. She was on medication. She didn't know what she was saying. I was protecting this family. You were protecting yourself, Patricia said coldly. My father finally stood up. Margaret, what did you do? I did what I had to do, she screamed. Emily was always Helen's favorite, and it wasn't fair. Rebecca worked hard. Rebecca became a nurse. Rebecca did everything right, and Helen still chose her. She pointed at me like I was the villain in this story. Rebecca was crying now, but they weren't sad tears. They were angry tears. This is insane, Rebecca said. We can fight this. We can prove she manipulated Grandma. You can try, Patricia said with a slight smile. But you'll lose. Helen was evaluated by 2 independent doctors before she signed this will. She was completely sound of mind. And she left detailed notes about why she made this decision. She pulled out a thick envelope and handed it to me. These are letters, Patricia said. 1 for each of them. Helen wrote them in her final weeks. She wanted you to read them aloud. My hands were shaking as I took the envelope. No, my mother said. We don't need to hear this. Actually, you do, Patricia said. It's part of the terms. If you leave now, you forfeit everything, including the jewelry, the family photos, all of it. Rebecca sat back down. I opened the first letter. It was addressed to my mother. My voice shook as I read. Margaret, you turned into your mother, and that's the saddest thing I ever witnessed. You were kind once. You were loving once. But somewhere along the way, you decided that love had to be earned, and you made Emily pay for every ounce of affection she ever wanted from you. My mother was sobbing now. I kept reading. You missed her childhood because you were too busy comparing her to Rebecca. You missed her teenage years because you were too ashamed of her choices. And now you've missed her entire life because you chose to. I stopped. I couldn't continue. But then I saw my grandmother's handwriting at the bottom. Keep going, sweetheart. They need to hear this. So I did. I wiped my eyes and kept reading. You told Emily she was a disappointment so many times that she started believing it. You made her feel like a burden in her own family. And the worst part, Margaret, is that you knew exactly what you were doing. You watched her cry herself to sleep. You heard her tell you she felt invisible. And you did nothing. My mother collapsed back onto the couch, her hands covering her face. That's enough, my father said quietly. No, Patricia said firmly. There are 2 more letters. I picked up the second one. It was for my father. Robert, I read aloud, you're a coward. You let your wife destroy your daughter because it was easier than standing up to her. Every time Emily looked at you for help, you looked away. Every time she needed you to defend her, you stayed silent. You chose peace over your own child. My father's face was stone, but his eyes were wet. The letter continued. Emily used to worship you. When she was little, she thought you were a hero. And you broke her heart piece by piece, every single time you chose not to fight for her. That's not love, Robert. That's abandonment. I folded the letter with shaking hands. The last one was for Rebecca. My sister was staring at me with pure hatred in her eyes. Don't, she said. You have to, Patricia replied. I opened it. Rebecca, I began, you were Emily's hero once. She looked up to you. She wanted to be like you. And you used that against her. Rebecca stood up. I don't have to listen to this. Sit down, my father said suddenly. His voice was sharp. You're going to hear this. Rebecca sat, her jaw clenched. I continued. You knew Mom and Dad were cruel to her, and instead of protecting her, you joined them. You made fun of her major. You laughed when she couldn't afford new clothes. You told her she was wasting her life. Why? Because it made you feel superior? My voice cracked on those words. You left her graduation early because you wanted to go to dinner, I read. You convinced your parents to leave with you because you couldn't stand the idea of Emily having one day that was about her. You're not the golden child, Rebecca. You're just cruel. Rebecca's face was bright red. She's lying. Grandma didn't write that. Patricia pulled out a photograph of the original handwritten letter and placed it on the table. It was my grandmother's handwriting, unmistakable. You people are unbelievable, a voice said from the doorway. We all turned. Standing there was someone I hadn't seen in 5 years. My Uncle James, my grandmother's son. The one my parents cut off for choosing the wrong life. And he was furious. Uncle James, I whispered. He walked into the room like he owned it, his eyes scanning my parents with disgust. Patricia called me, he said. Told me what was happening here. Told me you people were still treating Emily like garbage. My mother's face went white. James, this is none of your business. None of my business? He laughed bitterly. My mother just died and you kept me from her funeral. You told the hospital I wasn't allowed to visit her. You erased me from this family, Margaret, just like you tried to erase Emily. My father stood up. You made your choices, James. I fell in love with a man, James said, his voice rising. That was my crime. And you disowned me. But Mom never did. She called me every week. She sent me money when I was struggling. She loved me unconditionally, something you people don't understand. Rebecca was staring at him. You have no right to be here. I have every right, he said, pulling out a document. Because Mom left me something too. She left me as Emily's co-trustee. Which means I control half of the estate decisions until Emily turns 27. Patricia nodded. It's true. Helen wanted to make sure Emily had protection. Someone who would actually care about her well-being. My mother stood up, shaking. This is insane. We're her parents. We have rights. You have nothing, James said coldly. You gave up your rights when you treated her like she didn't matter. He turned to me, and his expression softened. Emily, I'm sorry I wasn't there for you, he said. Mom told me everything. She called me crying after your graduation. She told me what they did, and she made me promise to look after you when she was gone. Tears were streaming down my face. I didn't know you knew. I know everything, he said. I know they forgot your birthday 3 years in a row. I know Rebecca told people you dropped out of college when you were actually working 2 jobs to pay for it. I know your mother told the extended family you were unemployed when you were actually interning at a marketing firm. My mother gasped. How do you— Mom documented everything, James said, his voice echoing through the room. Every phone call with you, every lie you told, every time you made Emily feel worthless. She kept a journal, Margaret, and it's part of the will. Patricia pulled out a leather-bound notebook and placed it on the table. Helen started writing this 5 years ago, Patricia said. Every entry is dated. Every conversation is recorded. Every moment of cruelty is documented. Rebecca lunged for it, but James grabbed her wrist. Don't, he said quietly. She pulled away, glaring at him. My father finally spoke, his voice hollow. What do you want from us? James looked at me. That's not my decision. It's Emily's. Everyone turned to stare at me. And for the first time in my life, I had the power. I stood there, feeling everyone's eyes on me. My mother's desperate, pleading look, Rebecca's fury, my father's blank expression that had haunted me my entire life, and Uncle James, waiting patiently for me to find my voice. What do I want? I said slowly, tasting each word. My mother stepped forward. Emily, sweetheart, we can fix this. We can be a family again. I know we made mistakes, but— Mistakes? I interrupted. You call 24 years of emotional abuse a mistake? She flinched. You made me feel like I was nothing, I continued, my voice getting stronger. You celebrated every one of Rebecca's achievements and ignored all of mine. When I got my scholarship, you said I'd probably lose it. When I made Dean's List, you didn't even acknowledge it. When I graduated, you walked out. My mother was crying. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're not sorry I hurt, I said. You're sorry you got caught. Rebecca stepped forward. Emily, come on. We're sisters. You can't actually believe Grandma's— Poison! Don't call it poison! I shouted, and Rebecca actually stepped back. Grandma was the only person in this family who ever loved me. The only one who listened. The only one who believed in me. And you kept me from saying goodbye to her. I turned to my mother. You knew she was dying. You knew she wanted to see me. And you kept me away because you were afraid of this. Afraid she'd choose me. My mother's voice was barely a whisper. I thought I was protecting the family. You were protecting yourself, Uncle James said. My father finally stood up and walked toward me. For a moment I thought he might actually say something real, something true. Emily, he said carefully, what do you want us to do? I looked at Patricia. What are my options? She smiled slightly. You own the house. You can sell it. You can keep it. You can let them stay here or evict them. The money in the trust is yours at 27, or earlier if James agrees. You have complete control. Can I cut them off entirely? I asked. My mother gasped. Emily, no. Yes, Patricia said simply. Helen specifically included that option. You owe them nothing. I looked at my family. Really looked at them. My mother, who told me I'd never be enough. My father, who taught me that silence was worse than cruelty. My sister, who built her empire on my ruins. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady now. You have 30 days to move out of this house. You get nothing from the estate except what Grandma specifically left you in her personal effects, which amounts to some jewelry and photo albums. Emily, please, my mother begged. I'm not finished, I said coldly. You will not contact me. You will not show up at my apartment. You will not call, text, or email. If you violate this, Uncle James and Patricia will file for a restraining order." Rebecca's face was purple with rage. "You ungrateful little—" "Say it," I challenged her. "Call me what you've always wanted to call me. Show everyone who you really are." She closed her mouth. I turned to leave, Uncle James and Patricia following me. "Wait," my father said. I stopped but didn't turn around. "Was there ever a chance?" he asked quietly. "For us to fix this?" I looked back at him over my shoulder. "There was," I said. "It was at my graduation, when you could have stayed." And I walked out of that house forever. 3 months later, I was standing in my grandmother's house, my house now. Uncle James had helped me renovate it. We painted the walls sage green, my grandmother's favorite color. We kept her garden exactly as she left it. We turned her sewing room into my home office. I quit my job at the marketing firm and started my own consulting business. Turns out my communications degree wasn't useless after all. Emma came over every Sunday for dinner. Uncle James and his husband Carlos came every other weekend. We filled that house with laughter and love, the way my grandmother always wanted. I never heard from my parents directly, but I heard things through mutual acquaintances. They sold their house and moved to a smaller apartment. Rebecca stopped talking to them after they couldn't help with her mortgage anymore. My father retired early. My mother joined a church group and told everyone her daughter had lost her way. I didn't care anymore. One afternoon, I was working in my office when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a teenage girl standing there, nervous and shy. "Are you Emily Morrison?" she asked. "Yes," I said carefully. "I'm Sarah. I'm your cousin, Rebecca's daughter." My heart stopped. I didn't even know Rebecca had a daughter. "She doesn't talk about me much," Sarah said quickly, as if reading my mind. "I'm 16, and I heard what happened, with your grandmother, with the will." "How did you find me?" I asked. "Uncle James gave me your address," she said. "He said you might understand." "Understand what?" Her eyes filled with tears. "What it's like, to be the disappointment, to never be enough." And just like that, I understood. "Rebecca's doing to you what they did to me," I said softly. She nodded, crying now. "She compares me to her friend's daughter constantly. Nothing I do is ever good enough. I got a B+ in chemistry and she screamed at me for an hour. I want to study art, and she said I'm wasting my potential." I opened the door wider. "Come in." We sat in the living room, and I made her tea. The same tea my grandmother used to make for me. "Why did you come here?" I asked gently. "Because you got out," she said. "You stood up to them, and I need to know how." I smiled, thinking of my grandmother, thinking of her video, thinking of the moment I finally found my voice. "You start by knowing your worth," I said, "even when no one else sees it." Sarah stayed for 3 hours. We talked about college, about dreams, about survival. When she left, she hugged me tight. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not slamming the door." "Come back anytime," I said. "You're always welcome here." That night, I sat in my grandmother's chair and looked at her photo on the mantel. "You were right, Grandma," I whispered. "Walking away was the strongest thing I ever did." And somewhere, I swear I felt her smile. My graduation day was supposed to be about endings, about finishing something. But it turned out to be about beginnings. The beginning of choosing myself. The beginning of building my own family. The beginning of understanding that sometimes, the people who hurt you most are the ones who prepared you to be strong. I graduated alone that day. But I didn't stay alone. And that made all the difference.